the exchanges that were happening, so awful. God, at one point I think I was laughing out loud because it was so ridiculous. Hey, it's Cece. I'm back in my cozy corner. Super cozy today because I'm in my hoodie and I'm even wearing sweatpants because I cannot be bothered today. It's a Saturday and I'm just all cozy. I did shower, but that's pretty much as much effort as I'm going to make today. And I don't even have my knitting. No knitting because, like I said, no effort. So I'm just going to hang out here in my sweats and be super cozy in my corner. Minus the knitting. But this sort of fits with today's movie, which is Falling for Look Lodge. I confess, things are going to be a little different because I might have had a couple drinks before I watched the movie, and my notes and my reactions to the movie reflect my altered state. So I figured, well, why do my standard review when I can just wing it and do something completely different? So that's what we're going to do today. So we're just throwing out all I've done in the past and doing something completely new, and we'll see how it goes. So I didn't write anything up. Normally I write stuff up about what I'm going to say, but I got nothing. I'm just going to talk about this movie and my thoughts on this movie. So Falling for Look Lodge. Alright, I was super confused by the beginning of this movie. Granted, most of that was my own fault. I was having trouble viewing it on my TV. So I have the Friendly TV app, which allowed me to watch Hallmark Channel because I don't have the Hallmark Channel otherwise. So I have Friendly TV, which gives me Hallmark Channel movies and mysteries, Hallmark drama, all the movie channels that I want. And basically the only thing I watch on TV because otherwise I stream everything. So there's no point in having cable when the only television show I watch, or television channel I watch, is Hallmark. So I got the Friendly TV app, and usually I project it onto my TV, but for some reason it wasn't working. So I was watching it on my phone, and everything was very small. And I was a few lines in, and I couldn't figure out what's happening because we get our main character, she's running through the woods, and then she's in the lodge complaining about an employee who quit, and then she's on a bike riding up to the lodge, and the worker girl's like, oh my gosh, your sister's gonna be so mad. And she's like, I'm just trying to be a good employee. And I'm like, hold up, you were just complaining about an employee quitting. What's going on? And then I realized there was more than one woman. So for those of you who just so happen to be watching it on your phone, so it was teeny tiny, I was a little bit drunk, I had to rewind because I was like, wait, there's clearly more characters than I realized that was happening. So I rewound it and rewatched it. And here's what actually happened. We have Lily running through the woods. Then we have her sister Charmaine. She is like the general manager of the lodge. She was the one all upset because an employee quit. And then Lily was the one on the bicycle who was running late for work and then was worried that her sister was going to yell at her for being late and getting dirty when she fell off her bike. So yes, for those of you who are watching it while drinking and on a very small phone, now you understand what's happening at those beginning scenes. Because at first I couldn't figure out why I kept jumping around and realized, no, it's not. It's me. I need to pay closer attention. So from then on in, I paid closer attention, or as much attention as I could muster in my state. So while she's on the bicycle, Lily is riding past Noah's car when he opens his door and she falls off the bicycle. Whose fault is it? Is it both of their faults? Is it no one's fault? It's an accident. It's an accident. That's what I would say. I wouldn't dig any deeper than that, because it's like he should have looked before he opened the door, but why would someone look before opening their door? He's sitting in a driveway, has been there for a while. I would not have looked to check my mirrors before opening my door. But then again, she was riding her bike. Why would she think that this car that's been sitting there the entire time, why would she think that there's even anyone in there, let alone that they're going to open the door right as she's coming up to it? So I feel like they're both responsible, but at the same time, no one's responsible. It was an accident. But they both proceed to blame each other. Oh yeah, they both lied into each other about like, why did you do that? It was all your fault, your fault, your fault, until Lily notices the suitcase in his car, back of his car, and realizes he's a guest, in which case she apologizes, claims fault, and says she hopes he enjoys his stay. Because that's what you do when you're in customer service. I've worked in customer service my entire freaking life, and that's all we do, is apologize to people who are treating you horribly. That's the customer service life. Oh, you're a jerk? I'm so sorry. You're being so mean to me. It's my fault. That's what it comes down to. But basically, there was nothing cute about that meeting. I mean, if she just fell off her bicycle and he'd like apologize or something, it could have been cute, but it was not cute. Them both blaming each other and yelling at each other, that was just not adorable at all. And then her apologizing just because he's a guest. I hated that whole scene. And I have always tried to keep this pretty clean, but I can't for this movie because honestly, Noah is such a dick. For most of this movie, he is just, disrespectful to his sister. Clearly a workaholic, which, I mean, some people are. No shame there. But at one point, he receives a fax and he basically, like, yells at Lily for it. Like she has anything to do with it. I'll insert the clip here.
Is this a joke?
It looks real to me.
Did you pay them to send this?
Your office? No, but I like them already.
Hilarious.
Hey, the others are already waiting outside. Yeah. It's time to hike.
I mean, like, God, dude, come on. A, trust your staff and your employees, and B, don't be such a jerk to the people around you. He was making me so angry. So angry. Lily was fine. She was obnoxious. She was way too intrusive for just an activities director. So, I should probably actually talk about the plot. So what's actually happening is Noah's there for his sister's wedding. So his sister, her fiance, his daughter, and his parents. So it's clearly going to be a small, intimate wedding. They're all there for the wedding. And apparently it's like in 4 days. And the employee who quit was supposed to have had all these activities planned for the 4 days that they were going to be there. I'm just now thinking, who goes to a venue 4 days early and then expects to have it like packed full of planned unwedding activities? I mean, I understand the hair, makeup, massages, that kind of stuff you expect leading up to a wedding, but this was like full-on activities. So Lily, who used to be a tour guide, wants to have like an adventure company, is all over that. So she wants to get that job. So she convinces her sister to let her do it for this wedding party. So then she plans like this chock-a-block full schedule for them to do in the days leading up to the wedding, including like hikes, horseback riding. One day it rained, so then they had to go and she had to figure out some indoor activities. It was just, I mean, there was s'mores at the campfire, and I'll get all into that. So yeah, a ton of things going on. Maybe this is why I hold my knitting, so that I do less of this, because clearly I do a lot of this. I'm realizing as I talk. Anyway. Oh yes, so I remember where I was going with this. So Lily plans all of these activities, but it's like it's not enough. It's not just, she doesn't just plan the activities. She confronts Noah and she's like, I need to know every intimate detail of your sister and her soon-to-be husband's lives. Everything about everybody, about everything. It's like, you're a lodge. There's only so many activities you can do. And why do you need to know so much about them. This is completely unnecessary. She actually at one point wrote down like, man, she is super nosy. She's butting in everybody's business. And Noah's a jerk, as already discussed. He is not engaging at all. She's like, yeah, help me out. What kind of things is your sister like? And he's just like, your Wi-Fi sucks. And it's like, dude, come on. Ugh. And now my neighbor is weed whacking. There were also a couple times during this movie where they needed to generate some drama. So they just created drama with absolutely no reason. I was so confused. I was just like, WTF is happening right now? What is this? I don't even, what? So the first case was they went on a hike, which the hike, he wore new boots. And so she had already been teasing him about, I bet you have new boots. And then he shows up in new boots. And then she's like, you know, there's always someone with new boots. And she's like, you know, new boots can be dangerous. And I'm like, dangerous? I mean, granted, if you wear new boots on a long hike, can it lead to blisters? Yes. Will you be uncomfortable? Yes. Dangerous? That's a bit of a stretch. But yeah, she was harping on those new boots the entire time. Like, girl, not everyone hikes every day. Not everyone has footwear for it. Gosh, man, give the man a break. But they get back from the hike, and she actually took away his phone on the hike. Like at one point he's like, oh, I got great self-perception. I can finally do some work. And she just like, oh, let me see. And then takes it away, puts it in her pocket, and doesn't give it back to him until after the hike. And then she's like, you know, it's not my place to say. And then she gives him some really vague advice about how his sister is super nice. Her fiance's family is super nice, and that this is his chance to get to know them. I mean, it was completely unoffensive, really vague. It wasn't even advice per se. And he flips out, of course, being like, you don't know me. Storms off. And then her sister walks up and is like, you know, I entrusted you with this position. You're blowing it. And blah, blah, blah. No, Lily's like, no, trust me. It's going well. And I can prove myself. And then the two of them actually go off together. And I'm like, first of all, who is paying for all this experience? The bride and the groom. Who is having an absolute fabulous time? The bride and the groom. Who cares if the bride's stupid brother is being an a-hole the entire time? It's not about him. It's about the bride and the groom. They're enjoying themselves. They're loving all the activities that Lily has planned. So clearly, she's doing a fantastic job. But her sister's just like, everyone has to be perfect all the time. And if I see anyone slightly frowning, then you're terrible at this job. Like, so it was so illogical. And the whole sequence of events, like her giving this just lame little speech, him exploding at her sister showing up and exploding at her, and I'm like, what? Wait, what? What just happened? Why are all these people mad all of a sudden? There's absolutely was no build up and no reason for any of it whatsoever. The second time was near the end of the movie, so maybe I should cover some things in between before I get to that one. So yeah, they go hiking, and then that night they do some s'mores, and the marshmallow roasting technique, just shoot me now.
B, can you roast this marshmallow for me? More s'mores are marshmallow, cookie, chocolate, and peanut butter. All right, now.
Did you see that? He hands her a marshmallow, she sticks it on the stick, she sticks it right in the fire, pulls it off, blows it off. There was no roasting involved. Like, that's why she had so much trouble getting it off the stick, because it hadn't even begun to melt. All she did was set it on fire, blow it out. I was like, no. That's not how you roast a marshmallow. I know some people like it blackened on the outside, which great, good for you. I do not, but I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum. But if you're roasting a marshmallow, you gotta put it in a fire long enough that it melts inside, and then you burn the outside. You don't just stick the thing in the fire, pull it out, and try to pull it out. No, that was horrible. horrible. No, I do not approve. I do not approve her marshmallow roasting. And I realized that was probably just done so they could do the scene, but shame on you, director. I don't care what you have to do to get a scene. You do not roast a marshmallow that way. You should have planned for that. Also, the peanut butter thing, that is totally a thing. When my sister introduced me to Reese's cups instead of chocolate bar for s'more. So the whole more s'more with peanut butter, I'm down. Fully down for that. And during that, then they're planning to do their cake tasting, because I guess they do that 2 days before the wedding. Usually caterers like to have a little more notice about what kind of cakes they're making for a wedding, but I guess a cake tasting the day or 2 days before a wedding happens in this world. And the bride invites her brother. She's like, oh, come be the tiebreaker at the cake tasting tomorrow. And Lily too, because everyone's like, oh, you know who would be great to be involved in my wedding is my activities coordinator that I just met. So the next day they're tasting the cakes, and by tasting cakes I mean the two. There was 2 cakes, a chocolate one and some sort of lemon herb one. I don't even remember now. It was weird, like lemon, lavender, lemon. It was something weird, but it sounds tasty. I will never turn my nose up at cake. I love all cakes. And so Lily loved the chocolate immediately. Not Lily. Blech. I've already forgotten the bride's name. I think I wrote it down. Hold on. Alright, I didn't write it down. I'll just keep calling her the bride. So the bride loved the chocolate because apparently chocolate's her favorite cake, always has been. But then she tries the other one, also likes it. The groom, I did remember his name. His name was Craig. Craig liked the other cake, and Noah, again, starts being all competitive and jerky about it. They'd also had this trivia night where he was like, he went off and being super competitive. It was so unnecessary. And so now he's going like, well, my sister's favorite cake is chocolate. She would just be compromising by picking the other one. Be true, you know, why would you ask her to do that? Like, it was super inappropriate and jerky thing to do. And then his sister's like, well, why don't we just have both cake? And I'm like, yeah, have both cakes. You know, when my sister got married, she had 10 cakes. I'm not kidding. So they weren't obviously big cakes, they were smaller cakes, but she had 10 different types of cakes. So they were all different kinds of types and flavors. So, you know, there was a carrot cake, there was a lemon cake, there was a chocolate cake with chocolate frosting, there was a coconut cream cake, there was not devil's food, well, yeah, it is devil's food, but it's dyed red, so a red velvet cake, yellow cake with chocolate frosting, your standard birthday cake, so there was something for everyone. In fact, so they had displayed them all out on different cake stands at different heights, so it was really pretty on the way they sort of set it all up, and everyone had come and looked at them all and picked out their favorite cakes, and then when the caterers came and took away to cut them up, people were standing by the door to grab the slice of the cake that they wanted. So it's by the time the tray made its way back to the dessert table, everything was already taken off it because the people were literally lined up to grab cake slices for the ones that they had already picked out. It was actually really funny. But fortunately my sister, having foresight, had asked the caterers to set aside one slice of every single cake and box it up for them back in the staging area so that they would get to try all of the different cakes, because they didn't try them in advance. They just, tell me what kind of flavors you make. Great, here's the 10 we want. So that was great. So yeah, having 2 cakes, I fully approve. It was fantastic. I personally, at my sister's wedding, had multiple pieces of cake because I have no shame. When people were like, oh, they'd eat part of their cake, I'd be like, oh, you're not going to finish that? I'll try it, because I wanted to try as many of the different kinds of cakes as possible. Fortunately, because my sister loves me, she invited me to the post-wedding cake eating when they tried all the different flavors of cake. I think it was the next day. I think it was the next day. Because they didn't leave on a honeymoon right away. So the next day we broke out all the pieces of cake and then we all tried all of them. So I'm all about having 10 cakes. So why limit yourself to just 1 cake when you can have 2 cakes? So of course Lily, being the super nosy person that she is, she's like, "Hey Noah, have you written your speech yet for the wedding? I can tell you haven't. I bet you haven't." And he's like, no. And she's like, "Well, you have to have like 2 speeches. Because you have to have a speech as the best man, but then you also have to have a speech when you ask her to dance." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And she's like, "Because your father, because their parents are dead, so you have to step in for your father and dance with her first, and then the groom cuts in." And I was like, what? This is unlike any wedding I've ever been to. So apparently in this world, the groom, or the bride's father, or in this case brother, makes a speech, asks her to dance. They start dancing, and then the new husband steps in and asks to take over, and then they switch her. So I guess this is kind of like the handing over the bride, the walking down the aisle, handing over the bride kind of thing, but now with dancing. I've literally never seen that done. I've never heard of anyone doing that. I can see, because like you do that when you walk down the aisle. I don't necessarily approve of it because a woman is not her father's property, but it was super weird. But the speech, needing to give a speech before you do that, so it's like, yeah, he had to have 2 speeches, and I'm like, there's enough speeches at weddings to begin with. We don't need a speech before a dance. But of course, Lily's all into Noah, like, you have to do it. So then it's the next day. It starts raining, and of course, Lily hadn't planned anything for rain. So she's like, "Oh, I gotta come up with some indoor activities." So her first one is they're gonna bake apple pies in the kitchen of the lodge with apples from their own orchards. So I'd seen pictures of the orchards online, which is what inspired me to create my fallen apple cocktail, which you can see on my website. The link will be down below. It's good as an apple pie, in my opinion. Well, if you drink, it is. There is one thing I wanted to point out, is there was one scene in this baking aside that I enjoyed. So I don't know if that was scripted. I like to think it wasn't. I want to think that the one actor grabbed the apples, started to juggle, and the other actor also grabbed the apples, and started to juggle, and they were like, "Hey, look at us juggling," and then they were all laughing and hugging, and it was totally in the moment. I love that idea for this scene, so that's how I'm going to envision it. I don't want it to be scripted. For then the afternoon, Lily decides, you know what? We're going to do dancing lessons. Because apparently people are such bad dancers, and she wants to make sure that they all know how to dance before the wedding. Like I said, she's so involved in this that, like, the bride and the groom, if they had wanted to make sure that they were well adept at dancing before the wedding, they would have already taken classes. I guess she was more concerned about Noah not making a fool of himself. So she like forces them all to take dancing lessons. And it was the most awkward scene. I'm gonna be honest with you. When I was watching this movie, by the time I got to them in the kitchen cooking, I was done. I was done. I actually stopped watching the movie at that point. I'm like, I can't anymore with this movie. So I actually stopped, and then I came back to it again the next morning. The dancing number, it was so awkward for all parties involved. So first of all, we had the bride and the groom dance together. Then we have, well, first it started with the groom and the bride, or the brother and the bride dancing, because that's how, apparently in Lily's world, these things go. So he's dancing with her, and then the groom takes over, and Noah then dances with Lily, and they're using Teddy, the bartender, to teach them all how to dance. And so he's dancing with Kate, the other worker at the lodge. So Kate has this huge crush on Teddy, and so she always makes a fool of herself near him. It's just stupid and awkward to watch. So basically all of these 3 couples dancing together, like slow dancing, it was so awkward and uncomfortable. It was like watching a middle school dance. I regretted turning off this movie the night before. I was like, man, watching this sober is even worse. I was like, at least if I had continued watching this scene the night before, I could have done it with a little bit of alcohol in my system. But oh boy, I could barely get through it. Like, none of these couples had any chemistry whatsoever. The Teddy and Kate storyline, that is just, it has been the most uncomfortable thing to watch the entire time. Like, they showed I mean, obviously, Kate's acting stupid around him, and she says she likes him, but there's absolutely nothing between them that indicates there's anything between them. It was so weird. And then, of course, Lily and Noah, there's, again, nothing. And then there's this whole big scene with Beatrice. So Beatrice is Craig's daughter. I don't know how old Beatrice is supposed to be. I think she's supposed to be a lot younger than the actress playing Beatrice is. I mean, just watch this.
And Beatrice, you are going to love the lodge babysitter, Naomi. She's a computer whiz and she will help you edit your photos. Noah told me you are an amazing photographer.
You did?
Of course, you are. Can I see the photos from today?
Yeah, you can see all of them.
You know what? The way Noah reacts to this whole photography thing is exactly the same thing I would do with my nephew. My nephew came to me and said, I'd be like, oh, are you a professional photographer? I'd be like, oh, I get to see your videos? Yay! I'm so excited. And you know what? My nephew is 4. His camera is a cardboard box that used to hold plastic baggies that a circle has been cut out of and a knob hot glued on and some string attached as a strap. And this sort of behavior and reaction is exactly what I use with him. Beatrice is clearly not 4. I don't know what age she's supposed to be playing based on the dialogue and the way the other actors are treating her character. She seems like 6 maybe, but clearly she's like 12. I mean, I don't have kids. I don't know how old she actually is, but based on her height and everything, I'm thinking this girl's at least 12. She's clearly in that preteen, almost teenager, young lady stage, and I'm like, and they're speaking to her like she's a toddler. And the fact that she's smiling and not rolling her eyes and telling them off tells me that she is playing a toddler, even though she's nearly a teenager. All of the scenes with her were just terrible. And, it's like maybe she's a great actress. I don't know. She wasn't given any opportunities to actually act. She just sort of stood there smiling a lot with their absolutely corny, ridiculous acting towards her. It was, hands down, the worst part of this movie.
You remember my daughter Beatrice?
Of course, but you were so much littler.
See, it was 2 Christmases ago.
Look what I brought. We can take pictures together.
Am I in the presence of a professional photographer?
Why don't you...
Yeah, so at one point, Noah and Beatrice had gone off to work on a scrapbook, and everyone was looking for her, and they were all freaking out because they're like, where's Beatrice? And I'm like, she's 12. Did anyone even check her room? But, of course, she was with Noah the whole time. And then they're at the rehearsal. Noah begs off because he doesn't feel well, but eventually he just went back to his room to work. Lily goes to his room because she's worried that he actually is sick, so she brings him hot chocolate because everyone knows when you're having a stomach bug, hot chocolate is exactly what you need. I don't particularly care for hot chocolate. It is too sweet and rich for me. In fact, it makes me sick just thinking about hot chocolate. So if someone brought me hot chocolate to make me feel better when I was sick, I would just be like, that's a terrible idea. I mean, I realize that people feel differently about hot chocolate, so maybe that wasn't appropriate. But Lily brings the hot chocolate to Noah. She walks in, finds out he's been working and is not sick as he claimed, so she starts yelling at him about how he's such a workaholic, he's running away and avoiding his problems and upsetting his sister, and then he starts yelling at her, saying she is also avoiding her problems because she wants to start a company, but she's too afraid to do it and all this kind of stuff, and they're yelling at each other, and then his sister shows up and she's like, oh my god, are you working? And then she yells at him, and then she storms off, and then in comes Charmaine, Lily's sister, and who's like, what is going on here? And then two of them leave, and then she's like, Lily, this was inappropriate. You getting too close to this guest, and now I'm firing you. Take your stuff and move out before morning. and don't step foot on Lodge property after this moment. And I was just like, what the hell happened? This was the other moment where suddenly it was like everything was kind of like and all of a sudden everyone's like boom, and everything exploded, and I'm like, wait, what? What? I don't. It. And her sister firing her based on just something she quickly saw and had absolutely no explanation for, and she did not even let her Lily explain anything. It was. I'm like, what kind of horrible boss are you? And anyways, so the next morning, Lily used all night to write up her proposal for her new business because she's like, well, here's my opportunity now. I'm going to actually chase it. Noah realizes he's been a jerk this entire time, apologizes to his sister. Both him and his sister and the groom, they all go and leave this glowing review about Lily and all the activities she planned, because let's be honest, the activities she planned were fantastic. The bride and groom were just like, oh my gosh, this was the best weekend we could have possibly imagined. She did all of these things that were so meaningful to us. We had a great time. And then of course Lily's sister is like, oh my god, maybe I fired her too early with absolutely no reason and no explanation, even though it turns out she was actually doing this fantastic job and the people who are paying love her and everything she's doing, because I'm just a really sucky employer and have no idea what the hell I'm doing, even though I'm supposed to manage this lodge in the real world. So of course her sister's like, oh, I got this glowing review, would you come back? And Lily's like, no. I've decided to start my own business, to spend all night writing my proposal, so do me a favor and send people my way once I'm in business. Noah also realizes he needs to apologize to Lily, so then he goes looking for her, not knowing that she's been fired. And he runs into Kate, and Kate's like, yeah, here's her number. And I'm like, wow, it's the 21st century. And Kate knows Lily's number without pulling out her phone and looking it up?
Oh, here, her number. You should call her. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you.
Thank you for this.
Damn. I know the phone number to my parents' house, which is where I grew up because they have a landline. And if push comes to shove, I could probably manage to figure out I'm pretty sure I know my sister's cell phone number and my mom's, but that is it. If you were to ask me anybody else's, I used to know my dad's, but he changed it in the past 2 years, so no, not a chance. But anybody else, their phone number, no, I wouldn't. But yeah, Kate's just like, oh, you need to call Lily? Here, let me write it down for you because I just know it off the top of my head. I mean, good for her. Good for her. There's also a really funny moment. So Kate obviously has been crushing on Teddy this entire time. And it was terrible, as I already mentioned. But she hadn't made a move because he's been talking about his new love, Shelly, all this time. And then at one point, he's like, yeah. He tells Beatrice he's going to introduce her to Shelly. And so we get to see Shelly. And I'm like, oh my god, it's going to be a dog. Shelly was not a dog. I was super shocked. But Shelly, a turtle. So he's been talking about his love, his new love, Shelly, and it's a turtle. I'm gonna be honest, I did not see that one coming. That one, I mean, these movies are like a million times predictable. But the turtle I did not expect. So that at least was something unusual that I found highly amusing. Shelly, the turtle. But then we get to the wedding. Noah walks his sister down the aisle. And naturally she asks him about Lily, because that's what a person's thinking about seconds before their wedding. But it's all Hallmark movies, so let's all suspend all sense of reality. And then at the reception, we get to see Noah make his pre-dance speech. It's from the heart, and it's beautiful, and all this, yeah. I mean, I don't even remember what he said, because I really didn't care. But he sees Lily at the reception, of course, because his sister randomly invited her to his to a reception like that day. I was like, oh my god, we love you so much, even though we've only known you a couple days. Please come to our wedding or reception. So Lily shows up at the reception. Noah sees her when he's like making a speech. Then he like speaks to her instead. And then after the dance, they meet up outside. There are words said. It was probably meaningful. And then they kiss in the end. Oh, and Teddy asks Kate out during the reception. It was super awkward because I was like, you have shown exactly no interest in her whatsoever. Where the hell did this come from? There was no flirting, no build up, no lead up, nothing. So obviously you can tell, I thought this movie was not a very good one. If you're gonna watch it, I recommend a couple of drinks. If you're over 21, or the legal drinking age, wherever you are. Drink responsibly, folks. But yeah, I was definitely more amused when I was watching it at night than I was the next morning in the cold light of day. Because it was just, there was no chemistry between the two leads. There was no chemistry between any of the couples. The ridiculous bit with poor Beatrice being 12 and having to play 4. And ridiculous sister Charmaine, Lily's sister, not Noah's sister, but Charmaine just being a completely terrible manager and having absolutely no idea what she was doing or what is involved. And yeah, I really don't have anything good things to say. Oh, I should probably mention it is an interracial pairing. Cause I did look at some comments online. They're all like, "Well, good for Hallmark for finally having an interracial couple," which truth is I hadn't even noticed. I mean, obviously I noticed, but it didn't register because at this point, I feel like that is so normal that the fact we're only seeing it now, that's the abnormal. The fact that we've only ever had what we see on Hallmark, that has been so deliberate that when you see something like completely normal and ordinary, then you're like, it doesn't even register that that's what you're seeing, that it's the first time they're doing that, and you're like, oh, right, because it's 21st century. This shouldn't be the first time we're seeing this, but it is. So, it's the very least they could have done, and it should have been done long before now. So, it's like, even though I want to applaud them for doing it, at the same time, like, it shouldn't applaud, because it shouldn't have been done now. It should have been done long before now. The fact that they only doing it now is sad, in my opinion. But maybe we'll see more going forward, I hope. I expect this already, we're 2 movies into the fall season, and we've already seen more No, it was that last of the summer movies where we had the gay couple. So, I guess technically it's been like 6 weeks or a month between these movies, so, but at least in the past 6 weeks we've seen more diversity. We can at least be glad about that, I suppose. And yeah, so that's the end of my review. So I don't have any closing remarks other than didn't care for the movie. And stop making child actors play children half their age, because that was just terrible. That poor girl deserves better.